Have you ever wondered what drives a person to bet everything they have on a single belief? To risk their career, their reputation, or even their life, just to prove they were right? Today, we read diving deep into the fascinating and sometimes terrifying world of people who risked it all just to prove a point. Before we begin, if you find this video interesting, please hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these incredible stories. And if you want more content about human psychology and extraordinary true stories, subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's explore these remarkable stories together. Throughout history, there have been individuals who stood at the edge of reason and took a leap into the unknown. Some did it for science, others for pride, and some simply because they believed so strongly in their idea that no amount of danger could stop them. These aren't your typical success stories. These are stories of obsession, determination, and the powerful human need to be proven right. What would you risk to prove you were right about something? Your job? Your relationships? Your safety? Most of us would draw the line somewhere reasonable. But the people we're going to discuss today drew their lines much further away than most of us would ever dare. Let me tell you about Franz Reichelt, a man whose determination cost him everything. Reichelt was a tailor in Paris in the early 1900s. He had an idea that seemed brilliant. A wearable parachute suit that would allow people to safely jump from airplanes. Now that sounds reasonable, but here's where the story takes a dark turn. Reichelt became so consumed with proving his invention worked that he decided to test it himself. Not in a controlled environment, not with a dummy first. He chose to jump from the Eiffel Tower. On February 4th, 1912, cameras were rolling, newspapers were watching. He had told everyone he would use a dummy. But at the last moment, he decided to prove his point personally. He jumped. The suit failed completely. Reichelt fell straight down and died instantly. What's so haunting is that Reichelt had multiple opportunities to reconsider. Friends begged him not to jump. Officials warned him. But his need to prove his invention worked was stronger than his will to live. This wasn't just stupidity. This was obsession. Now let me share another story. In 1993, a lawyer named Gary Hoy worked on the 24th floor of a building in Toronto. He had a shocking habit. He would throw himself against the floor-to-ceiling windows to demonstrate how strong the glass was. He did this regularly to impress visitors, so confident that he literally bet his life on it every time. On July 9, 1993, during a reception, Hoy decided to prove his point again. He threw himself against the glass. The first time, it held. But he wasn't satisfied. He backed up for a second attempt. This time, something went terribly wrong. The window didn't break, but the entire pane popped out of its frame, and Hoy fell 24 floors to his death. The tragic irony is that Hoy was technically right. The glass itself didn't break. It was the frame that failed. In a twisted way, he proved his point, but it cost him his life. These stories might seem extreme, but the psychology behind them exists in all of us. Have you ever argued a point long after it mattered, just because you didn't want to admit you were wrong? If so, you understand on a smaller scale the same impulse. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Have you ever taken a risk just to prove you were right? Share your story in the comments below. I read everyone and would love to hear your experiences. Welcome back. Now that we've seen real examples, let's dig into the psychology. What's happening in the brain when someone decides that proving they're right is worth losing everything? First, when you take a risk, your brain releases adrenaline and dopamine. Adrenaline gives you that rush, while dopamine creates intense feelings of pleasure. For some people, this combination becomes incredibly addictive. They need bigger and bigger risks to get the same feeling, and normal activities start to feel boring. This helps explain why someone like Franz Reichelt couldn't just test his suit safely. The emotional investment was too high. Research has shown that our brains get better at handling uncertainty when we regularly take risks. It's like building a muscle. The more you exercise your risk-taking behavior, the stronger that impulse becomes. Psychologists have identified a personality trait called sensation-seeking, a preference for novel, intense experiences. But not all risk-takers are sensation seekers. Many are driven by the desire to master skills and conquer challenges. Think about Alex Honnold, who climbs massive rock faces without ropes. You might think he's a thrill seeker, but he says he's actually trying to eliminate thrills. He spends years preparing, practicing until the climb feels almost routine. For him, it's about achieving mastery and proving to himself that he can accomplish something incredibly difficult. Psychologist Albert Bandura introduced the concept of self-efficacy, the belief in your ability to achieve outcomes. People with high self-efficacy approach uncertainty with confidence. But this can be a dangerous weakness. Gary Hoy, the lawyer, almost certainly had very high self-efficacy. He'd done his window stunt many times before, which reinforced his belief that he could control the outcome. This connects to overconfidence bias. When people perform a task for a long time without negative consequences, they start to believe they're immune to failure. They think, I've done this 100 times before. Nothing bad will happen this time either. It's just a powerful and potentially fatal psychological trap that shows just how far the human mind will go to prove a point. Thanks for watching. Have you ever argued a point even after realizing you might be wrong? There's a powerful psychological reason for that, and sometimes it can lead to deadly consequences. It's called loss aversion. Psychologists found that losing something feels about twice as bad as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. So, when someone has invested time, money, or their reputation into a belief, admitting they're wrong feels like a huge loss. That fear can push people to take even bigger risks just to avoid that feeling. Take Franz Reichelt, the inventor of the parachute suit. He told everyone about it, invested his savings, and his whole identity was wrapped up in this invention. When people questioned if it would work, admitting failure would have meant admitting he'd wasted years of his life. For some, a massive physical risk feels less painful than that kind of emotional loss. There's also something called the consistency principle. Once we publicly commit to something, we feel intense pressure to stick with it, even if we get new information that suggests we should stop. When Reichelt announced he would jump from the Eiffel Tower, he made a public promise. Journalists were there, officials had given permission. Backing down would have been a public humiliation. That social pressure became overwhelming, and it cost him his life. This happens in small ways too, like when we dig our heels in during a debate just because we've already stated our position. So is all risk-taking bad? Absolutely not. It's essential for progress. But there's a huge difference between a calculated risk and a reckless one. Think about Adrian Hayes, the explorer who's climbed Everest and K2. He says he only takes measured risks, not reckless ones. A measured risk involves careful planning, backup plans, and an honest assessment of the dangers. A reckless risk is impulsive, ignores warning signs, and overestimates your own abilities. Reichelt's jump was reckless. He'd never even tested his suit with a dummy. He chose one of the tallest structures in Paris for his first real test. That's a desperate need to prove a point. Now contrast that with Barry Marshall, the doctor who deliberately infected himself with bacteria to prove it caused ulcers. It sounds crazy, right? But his risk was calculated. He'd studied the bacteria, had antibiotics ready, and was under medical supervision. He risked temporary discomfort to prove a scientific truth that would help millions. He ended up winning a Nobel Prize. What's the difference? It often comes down to motivation. Was it ego, or was it a goal larger than themselves? Think about the Wright brothers. They risked their lives and money to prove powered flight was possible, but they did it methodically. They studied birds, built wind tunnels, and tested designs. Their risks were measured. Marie Curie risked her health to prove her theories on radioactivity, facing poverty and skepticism. But her risks advanced human knowledge immeasurably. When J.K. Rowling was a single mother on welfare, she kept sending out her Harry Potter manuscript despite countless rejections. She risked the pain of rejection to prove her story was worth telling. When your motivation is external validation, you're more likely to take reckless risks. But when it's driven by genuine passion, you're more likely to take measured risks because you actually want to succeed, not just be seen trying. So how do you know if your own need to be right is pushing you toward unhealthy risks? First, are you dismissing valid concerns from people who care about you? When multiple people express worry, it's time to pause. Second, are you moving the goalposts, constantly needing to prove the same point over and over with bigger risks? That's a red flag. Third, ask yourself honestly, am I doing this to achieve something meaningful, or just to prove others wrong? And fourth, have you done your homework? Measured risks involve preparation. Reckless risks involve winging it. Human progress needs risk takers. Without them, we wouldn't have airplanes or antibiotics. But we also need the wisdom to tell the difference between a risk worth taking and one that's just dangerous. The most successful risk-takers combine courage with careful planning and confidence with humility. The goal isn't to avoid all risk, it's to take the right risks for the right reasons. If you found this valuable, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into human psychology. And tell me in the comments, what risks have you taken in your life? Were they measured or reckless? I'd love to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.